Oh, you know, Americans criticize their own country and their own society very strongly, but my point of view is different because I compare all I see here with the country I have come from, and this is absolutely different point of view. And when I compare it, then I see that it's much better than everything I knew before. You see, uh, I had the feeling that life in Russia was bad, horrible in many ways. It didn't occur to my mind that I could leave. I didn't think about that because at the moment when I was leaving Russia in December 1966, I was leaving with one purpose, to bring the ashes of Mr. Singh to his native village and to meet his brother and his relatives. And I really had no chance to think about anything else. And believe me, if I would imagine that I never come back, I would at least take the most, the dearest to me photographs from my house. I would probably give some hint to my children about that I will not come back. I will do something to, at least for them, not to experience this shock which they had in spring. I haven't done anything like that.
You referred to Mr. Singh. This was Brajesh Singh.
Brajesh Singh,
and
yeah.
this was the Indian intellectual with
Yes.
whom you fell in love in Moscow.
Yes.
And you wanted to go and marry him and live in India, didn't you?
No.
Or you wanted to marry him anyway, so that
no.
you could go to India with him.
No. The idea was that he came to Moscow, and he had a contract with the publishers in Moscow, which enabled him to work as a translator for the publishing house, translating from Hindi to English and from English to Hindi. And the contract gave him right to live in Moscow, to renew his contract after every 3 years, and we hoped that after each 3 years we would be able to travel, to go with him to spend his vacations in India or somewhere in Europe where he also had friends. We really had no idea to leave Russia and to go to India because, as he always used to tell me, that India is a very difficult place to live. He was not very fond of the situation in India himself, but we just thought that we could get married and we could travel on our vacation time. But we were deprived even of that.
Why would Mr. Kosygin not allow you to marry him?
Oh, that you should ask him. What he told me was that if you marry a foreigner, then he will be able to take you with him abroad. And no matter I tried to prove that we didn't plan such thing, I think they didn't believe me.
He also, you tell us in your book, objected to your being associated with what he called an old sick Hindu who would take you to a poverty-stricken backward country, didn't he?
Oh, well, I think this is the way this is the way he talked to me. Why you couldn't find some young man here in Russia instead of this old sick Hindu?
But he did give you permission to take his ashes.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
And when you got to India, what did you find was the attitude of the Russian embassy officials who met you at Delhi airport?
Well, when I reached India, from the very beginning, I felt that I entered the atmosphere of deceit, because I was promised one thing in Moscow, and here they met me with quite different conditions, which were put before me immediately, and I couldn't agree to that.
What, stay only for a week?
Well, they didn't want to let me to go to the village, which was my aim. I came, but it was my purpose. I came for that. They wanted to send me back in 2 weeks instead of 1 month visa, which I had from the Indian government. And they just didn't allow me to contact even those few Indians I knew in Delhi.
And how did you manage to have your way and to get to the village of Kalankankar, 600 miles from Delhi, where the ashes were to be taken?
Well, I had to begin arguing from the very first moment in Delhi. I argued with the officials in the embassy, and I succeeded to convince them that I must go to the village because that was my purpose. So I was allowed finally, but only for 1 week. But the moment I reached the village, I just decided I will stay there at least for a month, because I had this legal Indian visa for a month.
You're a very determined person, aren't you, when you want to be?
Well, I didn't understand, I couldn't understand why such a simple thing as visiting of the late husband's relatives, why it was considered to be a kind of political crime, and I couldn't understand why I am not allowed to do that. And that made me very determined. I was sure that I was doing the right thing. So I became very determined.
And you were determined enough to send away the lady from Moscow who'd been sent to watch over you, didn't you?
Well, I never
packed her
asked.
off back to Delhi, didn't
I
you?
never asked her to accompany me, and her presence was absolutely useless. And she knew that herself. I had great sympathy for her because she felt very unhappy in the whole situation. So I think she was happy when she left, after all.
In India, where you were so happy for that period, what gave you for the first time, the idea of not going back to Moscow?
Well, I think that it firstly came to my mind that I just would love to stay here and not to go back. Just because after all these first days of the most cynical deceit which I met there, and most unhuman treatment, and there was no reason for that.
This is by the Russian officials?
I mean, yes,
Yeah.
I mean from the embassy. I
Yes.
think that made me completely, that brought to some, it was the last straw, as you say, in your feelings, when, of course, I knew that Russian Soviet bureaucracy is always like that, but at the moment they showed themselves in the most unhuman way.
You were reading, you tell us, a book by Chester Bowles, who was then the American ambassador to India, that this began to put certain thoughts in your mind. How was that?
You see, that was a very slow process. I cannot really tell you exactly when it crossed my mind that I would go to the American embassy. And of course, in this process, the book of Chester Bowles took its important place, because I realized that, well, probably this ambassador would be kind and nice enough to understand my problems. Actually, I didn't met him in Delhi.
Why didn't you think of staying in India as opposed to eventually thinking of going to America?
I thought about it in the beginning. I thought my only idea was just not to go back. My feeling was not to go back to Moscow, not to go back to Soviet Union. If I could do something better than coming to United States embassy, I would try that, but there was no chance. I tried to talk to Indian officials. I told them that I would love to stay and not to go back, and they were terribly frightened with that.
For political reasons, it would be an embarrassment.
Oh, yes, they were frightened that would cause a lot of trouble between India and the Soviet Union.
And where was your precious manuscript, the manuscript of 20 Letters to a Friend at this time?
Oh, well, at that time my manuscript was locked somewhere in the desk of Ambassador Cowell.
And then he gave it back to you.
Well, much later. In the beginning I didn't even ask him about it.
And then when you got it back from him, where did you keep it?
I was in the village at that time. I was in Kalakankar village, and I asked him to mail it to me, and he did.
And where did you keep it?
I kept it in my suitcase.
Well, under the bed.
Yes.
And when the return arrangements to Moscow were finally made, and you got back to the Russian hostel in Delhi on the afternoon of March the 6th, what was your state of mind that afternoon?
Well, my state of mind was very uncertain, because I was missing my children very much, and really I bought a lot of presents for them, and I was just not sure myself what I was going to do. I could probably easily take my bags, and go back to Moscow just to see them. And at the same time I felt that going back to Moscow, going back to my usual Soviet life, would be a kind of suicide for myself, that I wouldn't be able to continue the same life there. I would have to join some, protesters in the most radical way, and that wouldn't make good for my children either. So I was just torn to pieces, that morning, that last day in Delhi. I had to join the lunch with the Soviet ambassador, which was the worst impression for me after 2 months of free life in India, because the moment I entered the Soviet embassy again and saw all the Soviet officials around me with their way of talk and their way of, the way how they treat each other and me, I felt very unhappy, and I felt how strongly I do not want to go back to that world. And the lunch with ambassador only made my decisions stronger, that I will not be able to continue to live that way of life again. So after lunch I came back to my room, and for 2 or 3 hours I was just torn between, which suitcase have I to pack, my big one for Moscow or my small one for going away, and finally I took the smaller one and just
But
went out.
before leaving that lunch with the Russian ambassador, you had managed to do one very important thing, haven't you, to get your passport?
Oh, that was after the lunch.
How did you manage to get that? Because that was a big mistake they made, wasn't it?
Oh, well, there is a very strange rule that the Soviet citizen, the moment he comes abroad, his passport is taken away from him, not left in his hands. So I believe just for that purpose, that he wouldn't run away. And I knew that my passport would be given back to me only in the airport. Such are the regulations. And I wanted to have it in my hands now, because this was the only document I could prove, who I am, and I had no papers otherwise. So I have asked the ambassador to give it to me now. I was not sure at all he will do that, but to my great surprise he did. And so that was very good for me.
And instead of packing the big suitcase to go back to Russia, you packed the small suitcase to go round the corner.
Yes.
And in the small suitcase was your manuscript?
It was my manuscript and few things I had with me from Russia, and few things, presents I got in India for myself. And really I don't know what. I didn't really think much what I took with me.
And how did you get away from the Russian embassy? Russian hostel?
I just asked for the taxi, because I thought that to walk all the way on the street with suitcase and overcoat in my hands towards American embassy would look rather strange.
But it wasn't very far, was it?
It was not very far to walk, but in that case I thought that if I take the taxi, then nobody cares where am I going, probably to see my friends or Ambassador Kaul or somebody. So I just thought that the taxi will take me safely right to the doors of the embassy.
You just said to the taxi, American embassy, please, did you?
Yes, and we were there only in a few minutes, because it was very near.
And when you got to the American embassy, what did you say? Did you say, I'm Stalin's daughter?
Oh no, there was no point to say that. I entered the embassy, and it was late in the evening, so nobody was there except of the Marine Guard, and I asked him whether I can see anybody, and he said no, the day is finished, everybody went home. And then I just took my passport and showed it to him, and the moment he saw the Soviet passport, without even saying anything, he realized that this is something serious, and he invited me to this small room near the entrance, and he invited me just to wait there. And then he asked for some embassy officials to come.
And did they believe you when you said you were Stalin's daughter and you wanted to
Well, I didn't
have
begin.
refuge?
I didn't begin with that. I haven't begun with that. First of all, I gave them my passport. I said that they looked at the passport, and I really cannot remember now what were the first words, but I think I had to explain to them that I am a Soviet citizen, so and so, and gave my name that I don't want to go back to the Soviet Union. Well, then they began to ask me questions, and I had to explain who I am and why I am in India. And well, as they told me later, they were very much surprised and didn't believe. But at the moment, I couldn't guess they didn't believe, because they were very nice and very polite.
And then, how was it that they managed to get you out of India on a plane that very night?
Well, there was a plane, Australian Airlines, Qantas, that very night, via Delhi to Tehran, Rome, and London. And so the embassy took decision that it would be the safest way just to help me to go out from India as soon as possible, because I had my passport and really there was no legal problem about that.
And how was it the Russians weren't out and about, keeping an eye on you and following you to the airport and so on? Why weren't you spotted? Why wasn't there a diplomatic incident?
I think Russians couldn't imagine at the moment that I was in the American embassy instead of my room, and then it was planned that this evening I had to visit Ambassador Kohl and somebody else next morning. So I think they really had no idea till the next morning when the radio brought news that I came to Rome.
Will you ever go back to India, Svetlana?
I would love to visit India again and to see my hospital, which is built now in the village, and to see this nice, kind family who were my hosts there. I would love to go for a visit.
Your hospital you've spoken of now, that is the hospital which has been built with the money you've sent from your book?
Yes, yes.
And when is that being opened?
It is the building is ready now, and they are buying the equipment, and I hope that they have found the doctors. And it was supposed to be opened on the end of October.
How many beds?
30 beds, and this is not bad for the village.
It's a village hospital.
Yes.
Is this what your money has mainly gone to, of the hundreds and thousands of dollars you've earned from your book?
Well, I would say hundreds of thousands.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you know how much you've earned altogether? I'm not asking you how much, but
well,
do you know?
Well, I certainly have it somewhere in my papers, but I don't remember. I'm very bad about arithmetics.
But is it your intention to give it all to a charitable purpose apart from what you need to maintain your standard of life in Princeton, which is pleasant but not extravagant?
Well, I have to exist. I have to live on something because I want to be independent. But the main purpose of charity is, of course, this hospital in India, and then 3 or 4 other organizations, children organizations, and so on.
Have you found it bewildering and startling to have so much money under your personal control, suddenly?
Yes, I would say that I felt many times that it's much better not to have money.
Are you still a Russian citizen?
By the Soviet law, I am, because it's not in my power to renounce it. I can only express my feelings that I do not feel myself the Soviet citizen anymore, but it's only the Soviet government who can decide to renounce my citizenship.
Are you asking them to do so?
I have begun with my lawyers this long and difficult legal process, and I hope we shall reach the end one day.
Why did you burn your Russian passport?
I did it on the spur of moment, and that was really just my own emotional expression, just expression of my feelings, which was important for me and had some symbolic meaning for other people, but from the point of view of law, it didn't mean anything.
Do you hope to be an American citizen?
I would love to be an American citizen.
What do you miss most about Russia?
I miss my friends and my children.
How old are your children now?
My son is 24 now, and my daughter-in-law is 23, and my daughter is 19. and I think about all three of them as my children. And of course I have a lot of friends, and I miss them, I do.
Any grandchildren?
Not yet. Well, I hope I'll have them.
In your book, Svetlana, you describe how you talked to your son when you got to Switzerland from India. What was his reaction?
You see, when I made a telephone call to my son from Switzerland, I thought that he had received my letter I wrote to him from Switzerland, in long 15-page letter in which I explained all my reasons and motives why I cannot come back. But I understood from the talk that he has not received it, so he couldn't understand anything what was going on, and he was certainly shocked by this unexpected news, and he understood immediately that I was quite serious not to come back. And because we were very close to each other, he certainly felt unhappy. He couldn't certainly approve my actions, because it was a personal shock for him.
Do you think he and your other children and your friends, do you think they think badly of you now, or do you think they understand?
I have full confidence in my friends and in my children, and I know that they not only understand me, but that they remember me and love me, and I absolutely don't care about any statements or what they can make against me, because I know how these statements are done in the Soviet Union.
Do you hear from them at all, or can you contact them?
I had a letter from my son last summer, 1968, and I had a Christmas card from him in December. I was very happy to have it, and I write to them also on the occasion of Christmas or birthday, not more.
Do you think you'll be able to see them again one day?
I only can have a hope for future that one day everybody in the Soviet Union would be allowed to travel, and then they might come and spend their vacation with me in Princeton, or my friends might come and visit me.
Everyone will find your second book very different from your first. They're both fascinating in different ways. How would you describe the difference between the two? The difference between 20 letters to a friend, which you wrote in Russia, and Only 1 Year, which you're now publishing?
Of course, these are two absolutely different books, and the first one was not a book at all. It was really 20 personal letters which were published, the way as a diary can be published or personal notes can be published. And though the second book was really a book, I knew that I was writing the book. I tried my best, and the second book was addressed really to the whole world where I found myself. And there are 5 long years between two books, and a lot of events and a lot of changes in myself. I might say that I am a different person now, and it took me, these 5 years brought so many changes to my life that the author has changed,
You didn't write 20 letters to a friend. You didn't write them with any thought of publication in mind at all.
I couldn't possibly have any thought of publication those days. I could only hope that 20 letters will become a piece of underground literature in Moscow. There are many things like that, and people read many works of poetry and prose, and which have no hope for publication.
Why did you have it smuggled out of Russia by the Indian ambassador in, when was it, the winter of 1965-66, I think?
Winter of 1966, January 1966.
Why did you have it taken out?
It was the time when, Sinyavsky and Daniel, Sinyavsky was my friend, they were arrested, and we were all sure that...
These are the two writers who have
Yes.
been tried and sent to prison.
Yes, later in February there was a trial, and they were sentenced to prison. But with their arrest, we all felt in Moscow that the time has begun when writers will have very difficult time, and everyone could imagine that, you can be searched at home, and whatever manuscript you have, good or bad, important or unimportant, it can be confiscated by police. So I think it was just of the very simple feeling of fear to have something to be safe somewhere. And the Indian ambassador at that time proved to be a very good friend, and really he only agreed to take it away and to lock it in his desk.
Now, reading your second book, Only 1 Year, which is just being published, I couldn't help but remember a passage in your 20 letters, which I'd like to read because it's a very beautiful passage. You said this, you said, no matter how cruel and harsh our country may be, no matter how often we stumble and are hurt, no matter how many undeserved wrongs we may endure, no one who loves Russia in his heart will ever betray her or give her up, or run away in search of material comfort. And you say of your country, you say, you comfort me and light the way. Nothing will ever blacken you in my eyes. You've changed a lot since you wrote that.
First of all, I would love to say that this is not very good translation.
It sounds well, even so.
Oh, well, it's not very precise translation and not very good one. But nevertheless, that was written in the year 1963, at the time of Khrushchev, when everybody in Russia, including myself, lived with hopes that something better will happen and some kind of liberalization will come. And I would say that at that time we all felt very patriotic. And certainly there was no idea in my mind that something might happen, that I might leave. But one can never plan. I don't believe in planning, and I never plan my life. So 5 years, when was it? 3 years later, it happened that I was in quite different circumstances, and then I decided not to go back.
Also in the same passage, Svetlana, you refer to your 37 years, you were then 37 years of foolish, double, pointless, hopeless life. Now, was this one of the phases when you were depressed about yourself? And if so, why? Why was your life pointless and hopeless and double?
Well, it was not very much, my life was not very much different from the life of all my friends and from many Soviet Russian intellectuals, because this is the way everybody felt, that you cannot do what you would like to, and there is really rather isolated life from the people, from the world, from everything. And I must say I was used to that life. I lived many years like that, and this habit to that kind of life makes one feel paralyzed, as if you never will be able to live again. And so I feel so much different now. The first book, those 20 letters to a friend, had different purpose. It was a very personal, you can call it personal memoir or a family chronicle. And the subject of that book was really a family and family life and the tragedies in the family, which, as I felt and many readers felt too, was the story of the family had its political significance.
Certainly.
But it was I didn't intend in the 20 letters to give a full explanation of political life of my father and the way I understood it. It was not the purpose.
But nonetheless, your attitude does seem to have changed. I mean, in your new book, you describe him, in your own words, as a moral and spiritual monster. But there's nothing as harsh as that in the first book.
If you read attentively 20 letters to a friend, you will come to the same conclusion.
But not the same words.
But if you read it attentively, you will see that. You will see that. I
Yeah.
think that the story, the tragic story of our family, only confirms
Yes.
that he was really a moral and spiritual monster. I haven't said that because I thought I showed it.
Yes.
I was surprised that it was not understood.
Well, I think probably the reason the other impression was given was because you've given a lot of letters that he wrote to you affectionately as a little girl and calling you his little sparrow and saying I'm sending you apples and little joke letters you used to
But
write.
why are you surprised about it?
No, I think saying that's probably why the impression got about that you looked upon your father rather affectionately.
But don't you think that a person who is very cruel to his political rivals can be very tender to his child? I think it's very natural, and why I am accused for that?
That has happened throughout history.
Well,
Certainly. When did you first begin to realise, Svetlana, that your father was not merely a dictator, but was a man who presided over a bloodbath of terror and was responsible for the death of one way or another of perhaps 20 million people? But when did that first sink into you? Or did it gradually come?
well, it came very gradually because certainly even in our family, apart from all political books which I could or could not read, in our family there was always this shadow of my mother's suicide, which was done not for nothing, and everybody felt it and knew that. So this was the beginning for me when the moment I learned about it.
And that was when you were 16?
I was 16 years
Yeah.
old. That was the moment which gave me the first shock and first
Yes.
thought that not everything is right.
Are you convinced that your father was to blame for your mother's suicide?
Well, this is what everybody's opinion in the family was. And then gradually, I think mostly after his death, when people began to talk more freely, and I wouldn't say that books or speeches made by different leaders would help me, but there were mostly talks of my own friends and my own relatives, and just the whole truth about the 30s and 40s in the Soviet Union came gradually on the surface, and when you begin to realize it, it's a very long process. I wouldn't try to tell you definitely when, on what day it began and on what day it was completed. It is probably not at all completed for me, but I think I was probably one of many people of my generation who never knew the truth and then slowly began to realize it.
What do you think about the argument which one often hears that, well, summing it up, it's that the means, the end justified the means, in the sense that the terror over which your father presided, however brutal, was the means of making Russia an industrially advanced nation and strong enough to resist Hitler during the war?
Oh, well, that kind of opinion I have heard while I was still in Moscow, and I felt that sometimes even the party takes such point of view, saying that we had a lot of difficulties and mistakes, but after all we have reached something. I cannot agree with it.
Why not?
Because I think that it's the most important thing, that to reach the good purpose you have to use the good means.
Do you agree with that version of Russian history which tends to idealize Lenin and to revile Stalin?
No, I cannot agree with it, because I came to rejection of the communism totally, and so for me Lenin is not much better than Stalin or anyone else. I absolutely don't agree with that.
One distinction which does occur to me in your two books, that in the first book, the impression I get is that you seem to suggest that Beria, the secret police chief, that he had a very strong influence on your father, and that he was, as it were, the evil genius behind him, whereas in your second book you tend to move away from that idea and give your father the main responsibility? Which is, do you think, the truth of the matter?
Oh, well, I would like to explain, because it was the misunderstanding about my first book, and many people and critics felt that I just put the whole blame on Beria and all responsibility for the purges of 1937, 38, and so on, which I never did, and I didn't feel that way. What I have said in my first book was that certainly Beria was very closely connected with our family, and certainly he had his own personal, very strong influence on my father. And in that process of, when most of the members of our family were arrested and ruined, Beria took a very important part in doing that. But I didn't talk. You cannot find me a page in my book. I never talked about responsibility of Beria of all those events and
Well,
purges.
you do say this. You say that your father was, and I quote your words, astonishingly helpless before Beria's manipulations. You give the impression that it wasn't really your father that was doing all the bad things, but Beria was manipulating.
But what was I talking about? I was talking about the members of the family. I was talking about those aunts and uncles, and in this connection I was talking about Beria. I didn't even touch the problem about the purges.
What reaction did you have when Khrushchev made his celebrated speech
I'm sorry.
condemning?
I'm sorry, we have lost the second half of this question
I'm so sorry.
About the Beria in the second book.
Yes, please go
May
on.
I?
I'm sorry, I thought you were finished.
Well,
Please go on.
no, this was the first book, and then you said that in the second book I put it in different way.
Certainly.
Because the second book has a different dimension, and I tried to explain events in the Soviet Union from broader point of view, and it was not a family anymore, but the history of the party, and there you could see I said very definitely that my father, being the leader of the party and of the state, needed people like Beria and Yagoda and Yezhov and other people, because they were helpful in his policies. So it is not that I have changed my mind, and not as if I have changed my opinion after 5 years. My opinion is the same, but this is a different subject to talk about, and just a different dimension of the events.
Take a specific point, the murder of Kirov in 1934. In your first book you suggest that the logical conclusion is that was Beria's deed. Do you still take that view?
I never suggested that it was Beria's deed. I only offered a quotation from the words of my friend in Moscow, who was an old Bolshevik, and she spent 17 years in jail and camps and everything. And I only quoted her words when she said that once during the Civil War, somewhere in the Caucasus, Beria was caught and Kirov ordered to shoot him, and that since that moment Beria had some personal, he remembered that these were her words, and she knew things of those days better than I did, so I only repeated that, and that's all I did.
When Khrushchev made his celebrated denunciation of your father's regime and exposed certain facts, but not all the facts about the terror, what was your reaction? Were you surprised? Were you shocked? Were you ashamed? What was your reaction?
Well, first of all, I knew from the talks of all my friends that something like that is going to happen, and the party is going to say, to have some official saying about the party's history of the previous years. So I was not surprised that that kind of speech was delivered, and it didn't really bring much news to me, because all these things were talked about since the moment my father died. All these things were talked about, and I was given the text of the speech to read, you know, to read privately, so I could think about it as much as I could.
Mikoyan gave it to you?
Yes,
Yeah.
he gave it to me, but I believe he gave it to me maybe not by his own decision, but maybe it was a decision even of Khrushchev himself, just to give me opportunity to think about it quietly. And then Mikoyan offered, he said that he would like to explain to me something if I don't understand, but I really didn't need any explanations about it.
Why, as a matter of interest, do you use your mother's family name as your surname, Alliluyeva, instead of either your father's name or either of those, the names of your two ex-husbands?
First of all, my mother's name is Alliluyeva.
I apologize for the inaccurate pronunciation.
You see, it's maybe something unusual for the West, but in the Soviet Union, many women preferred to still have their maiden family name after marriage, and so did my mother. She never had my father's name, and even my school friends after marriage had their own maiden names and gave it to their children. So it was nothing unusual that my mother had this name, and according to the Soviet law, I could also choose father's name or mother's name, and I preferred my mother's name. I thought it was closer to me, and even my son has the same name. This is all absolutely all right with the Soviet law.
Your books are intensely personal, and they inevitably raise personal questions. Could I ask you this? Your two marriages, which you describe as unhappy, did they end for reasons for which any marriage ends, or was it part of the psychological cloud which hung over you, and the emotional shocks you had suffered in your youth that made you had hurt you in a way, made you difficult?
I don't know. I think there were very personal reasons why these two marriages couldn't last, and but we felt no bitterness to each other, and I could meet my first husband later and my second husband, and because we had children, so there was nothing so terribly upsetting about it.
You had suffered a great emotional upset, hadn't you, at the age of 17, when your father stopped you seeing a man who had fallen very much in love with him and had him sent away to prison.
Well, it was quite a shock, because it was really, for me, I was very young, I was 17 years old, and it was the first time when I was a witness of the fact that innocent person was sent to prison by the order of my father. It was so obvious, so that was absolutely shocking for me.
And why did your father want to send him away? Because he was much older than you, or because he was a Jew?
Well, I really don't think what were his reasons. I think he just wanted to get rid of him in a way.
Well, why was your father against Jews? And like a lot of the Russian hierarchy, the communist hierarchy. What's the reason for the anti-Semitism?
I thought always that, and I'm convinced that his own anti-Semitism was based on the personal hatred and rivalry with Trotsky and in the party, and because Trotsky was one of the serious rivals, and those who were Trotskyites were mostly Jewish people. So out of that struggle, which took many years, I think he had always the feeling that all Jewish people were against him or something like that.
How did life in Russia change under Khrushchev?
It became different because there was no terror. People could meet each other without fear. There were contacts with abroad. People began to travel. It was really the time of some comparative freedom. I'm saying comparative because, of course, it was not full freedom, and nothing has changed basically in the structure of the society, which remained basically the same. And probably we felt how free those years were after it was all finished.
In other
And-
words, it is less free now than when you left.
Oh, it is uncomparable. It cannot be compared.
Of the men who ruled in the Kremlin when you were in Russia, you appear in your books to have liked Khrushchev the most. Is that a fair impression to have?
Well, comparatively.
What was it that you liked about him compared to the others?
I think from the human point of view, he was a he was rather a human person, and he really tried his best to bring some changes in Russia, to make it more liberal country, more free country. Of course, in those strict frame of society which he wasn't able to change. And I think that everybody felt it and appreciated his efforts.
Why was he? I know you're not don't set yourself up as a political expert, but why do you think he was deposed?
Well, I'm certainly not a political expert, and all my opinions and judgments are purely personal and not of the just based on the personal observations and experiences. Well, as I thought, as many people thought, that he was just ousted by the conservatives, who couldn't agree with the trend, with the line which he took.
Do you think that now in Russia, or certainly when you left Russia, the conservatives, as you call them, have held sway in the Kremlin?
Well, yes, I had such impression that it was like that. But maybe I shouldn't exaggerate, because last year we had events in Czechoslovakia, and at the time of Khrushchev we had the same events in Hungary. So probably there is not much difference.
You were, of course, still in Moscow when Daniel and Sinyavsky were tried and sentenced and sent away. What did you think about that yourself?
Well, as I remember, it was a terrible shock for all intellectuals, and of course for us, for those who knew Andrei Sinyavsky personally. I never knew Daniel. We just couldn't believe that the person who worked side by side to us, a very talented critic, was arrested and got such a cruel sentence only because he has written several books and published them abroad. It was absolutely shocking and unbelievable, but it happened, and that was the beginning of a new era of, oppression.
You made a personal protest about this yourself, didn't you?
No, I made no personal protests.
But didn't I remember in your book you say that you were at a meeting?
Oh, that was a discussion. There was a discussion in our Institute for the World Literature, but that was after the sentence,
Yeah.
after the trial, and that was the discussion about those who were working in the institute and who somehow expressed their sympathy to Sinyavsky. So they were accused in all kind of political crimes. So I tried to protest against that.
What did you say? Was this at a meeting?
Oh yes, that was a party meeting, and
What did you say?
well, I said that I couldn't understand what is going on in the institute when people are so easily accused in political crimes for no reasons.
And what was the reply?
Well, the reply was that many people supported me, supported my opinion, and shared my opinion, and we were all accused to be politically immature people.
Is discontent in the Soviet Union with the system, is it confined to intellectuals, artists, writers, people like you used to know in the upper class, or is it more widely spread?
I'm absolutely sure that it is widely spread but on different grounds, because of course we have mostly ideological, intellectuals are mostly ideologically opposed to the system, but of course workers and peasants, they have their own economical grounds to be displeased, which are probably much more serious. And I believe, I always felt it, and I know that there was no reason for changes, that millions of people feel very much discontented with the regime.
You mentioned Czechoslovakia a moment ago, and before the Russians invaded, I went to Prague for a time and saw how the Czechs were excited and enthusiastic about what they called the idea of combining communism with freedom. Now, do you think that makes sense? Do you think there can be a liberal form of communism, or do you think that the very nature of it is that it can't operate without a police state?
I don't believe in the combination of freedom and communism. As much as my experience can tell me, some liberal time, some liberalization can take very short while, but generally these two things do not go together.
You say in your new book, Svetlana, towards the end of it, you say this, and it's a very pessimistic sentence. You say, at present, there is nothing in the USSR that holds a promise of a better and freer life. Perhaps just the contrary. Why do you say such a pessimistic thing?
Well, I wrote that almost a year ago, and I think I was right, because it seems to me that events showed only more oppression of freedom and writers and intellectuals. And for that reason I feel pessimistic, because I feel, after all, very sad about all my friends there in Russia.
But with the changing mood of younger people and the feeling of the intellectual class and the discontent of the mass of the people, do you not see an occasion when these might come together and create a situation which even the state machine can't hold down?
I can have only hope that sometime in future the situation will change, and people in the Soviet Union will at least have basic freedoms for speech and travel and expressing of their opinions, and freedom to write. But this is very vague hope of mine.
Since you became a celebrity in the West following your departure from India, have you suffered much by the attacks which have been made on you in various quarters, and unfair things which have been said about you? Has it wounded you and hurt you, or have you taken the rough with the smooth, as we say in England?
Well, I wouldn't say that I suffered much from the attacks of those who were supposed to attack me, communists and pro-communists, and journalists and writers who wrote and said about me all kind of things which I was prepared to hear from them. Probably I suffered sometimes from unexpected fact that people whom I supposed to be friendly shared the opinions of those pro-communists about me. That was a little bit surprising, but I didn't really. I think I was.
What personal things, that you had wrong motives, that you were after money, that you were unstable, and all this kind of thing. Were those the things?
Well, I really thought that something like that will come out from the Soviet Union. You know, I only know too well how propaganda begins from Moscow and then goes all over the world. Well, I can only prove by my life that it's not like that, and really I don't think I should suffer much from all these things.
But at least you must have derived some humour from one of the comments. Didn't somebody suggest that you'd taken the Romanov diamonds with you?
Well, that I read in some Russian emigre newspaper published on the West Coast here, and well, all kind of things, but they are so ridiculous that this cannot even hurt me.
I would like to ask you one question about your religious beliefs. You were baptized into the Russian Orthodox Church in 1962. You were brought up an atheist in the very citadel of atheism. What process brought you to religion? Was it a reasoned rejection of communism and materialism? Was it a personal revelation, or was it perhaps emotional hunger after all the stresses and trials and agonies your family had been through?
It's very difficult to explain because it's very personal. It's a very personal thing, and for me it was certainly a very emotional thing, which was mostly my feeling, and certainly not reading the books, and certainly not rationalistic decision. And I tried to explain it in the book as much as I could, because it was a long process too, and I think it was based on some inheritance of religious feeling which I had from my grandmothers, and then the conditions of life, when life becomes difficult, and then the inner life becomes very important for human being, and the moment comes when you feel that you just cannot exist without
something to hold on to.
No, I would say you just feel that there is God. I cannot explain to you how do you feel that.
At moments of difficulty such as you've mentioned, have you ever felt like committing suicide as your mother did?
Well, I probably had some moments of despair in my life in Moscow, which is rather hopeless and useless life. But I don't think I could really seriously think about that, probably because I always remembered what she has done. Maybe that was a good example not to do that.
What are your plans, personal plans now for the future? You're rich, you're youthful, you're attractive. Are you going to travel? Are you going to live in America? Are you going to write more books? What are you going to do?
I definitely am not going to write another book immediately, because I have nothing to say at the moment, and probably after my second life, which began at the West, I will be able to write something again but that will be not very soon. What I want is just to learn more about life, about people. I am interested in people, in human beings and their lives and relationship. I'm not interested in politics, and I would love to travel and to see more countries. I haven't seen Europe. Switzerland is not enough. So I hope I will be able slowly to do that, and I hope I will enjoy the freedom I got.
If your children and your friends were happening to hear of this interview, perhaps hear the soundtrack on the radio or something like that, and you knew they were listening, what would you want to say to them?
Well, I will be not surprised at all if my children and their friends and my friends will hear it on BBC in Moscow, because myself, when I was in Moscow, I was used to listen to BBC broadcasting. Well, I think they will be glad to hear that I remember them and that I love them. They certainly have no doubt in it.